Have you ever looked at all of this information and felt like your brain's about to explode? What if I told you there was a way that you could turn all of this chaos into something that can help you picture the entire topic, its equations, its content, all of it, and understand it so well that you can solve any problem, any question, almost automatically? Well, that's where mind maps come in. Creating a mind map links all of the concepts of a chapter on one single page, and it does it so well that your mind can near perfectly understand and remember it forever. And I've made videos on how to create mind maps for content-based subjects like medicine, but what's been highly requested is making videos for technical subjects as well, like physics, chemistry, maths. And that is what this video is about, because what no one realizes is how easy understanding the concepts, these technical maths, chemistry, physics, complex concepts can become if you create a mind map for the topic. Oh, and by the way, my name is Zain Asif. I'm now a fourth year medical student, and for the last year or so, I've been perfecting my method and the skill of creating mind maps, so much so that I now almost solely rely on mind mapping and practicing questions, and that is the majority of my revision. Now, a misconception I do need to clarify is mind mapping does not replace the practice of questions for any subject, whether it's content-based or it's technical. What creating a mind map does do is that it gives you a rock solid understanding of the topic very quickly, which then at least halves the amount of time that you need to spend spamming through practice questions. Simply put, it creates a strong mental model, a structure of the topic in your head before you start any revision. Because once you have this big picture, this structure that links all the different concepts of that topic in a smart way, you'll be able to look at any problem, identify what's being tested, where it fits in your head, and then remember the steps to actually solve it. There's no mindless memorizing. What mind mapping does is that it takes your understanding to an incomparable level, which then makes the entire process of practicing questions, remembering, memorizing, all of it much easier and quicker. The mind mapping process is 90% identical for technical subjects as it is for content subjects. And what it involves is three main steps: priming, relating, and organizing, which all come together to form the Pro mind mapping method. And today what I'm going to be doing is explaining this method through an example topic: organic chemistry. But before we jump into the three parts for this method, I want to let you guys in on something super exciting. I'm finally working on an exclusive course that will teach you everything that you need to know about this skill of mind mapping and studying information so that you can learn faster and more effectively than ever before. The waitlist for early access to this course opens up today, so click in the link in the description to sign up. And do hurry, I won't keep it open for long, because if you do sign up, you'll get a lot of insider perks like exclusive templates, early bird discounts for when it actually comes out, and the chance to shape the entire course in itself. I'll literally be holding private Q&A sessions with you guys to hear more from you too, because honestly, I just want to understand exactly the things and create this around the exact things that you need to finally master your study system. So this is your opportunity to be at the forefront of it all, because I truly believe that what we're creating is going to be something that will transform your entire approach to learning. Anyways, sign up to the waitlist completely for free in the link in the description. It won't be open for long, and I'll keep you posted with all of the details that are coming soon. Thank you so much for the support, and let's finally get started with the first part of this method. Phase 1, priming. The priming phase is the first part of the studying process. It is the very important preparation that needs to be done before we jump in and start learning and practicing the questions. I really want to emphasize that doing each step within this priming process, doing it properly, it will shave off so much time wasted, because you'll actually have a good foundation when going through the topics. When practicing questions, you'll already have the big picture, so your mind will be much more ready to absorb the new information. Rushing this step and then jumping to the difficult content, which is what I see a lot of people do for whatever reason, whether you're overconfident or whether you feel like you know your stuff, is not worth it, because it's like trying to solve a puzzle without actually flipping the pieces over and looking at all of them. So take your time with it. The priming starts as soon as you open the first page. The steps for priming are: number 1, to figure out what the structure of the chapter is, and number 2, understand only the basics of the chapter. The basics, by the way, means understanding and trying to engage what all the basic concepts involved are, as well as knowing all the question types that you can be assessed on. Knowing the question types is the one bit that is actually different between the technical and the content-based subjects. But yeah, during the next few go-throughs, when you're going through the information in the priming step, no details, no memorizing of the information or the formulas yet. Our brain learns in layers, so given information that can easily stack on, that it can easily layer on and understand quickly. Because if you can't understand something, it is because you don't have the prior knowledge in your head to support that understanding. But let's start with the structure, the very first go through. Let's say you open up your organic chemistry chapter. What you should not be doing is reading line by line. You need to be taking the time right now, the next 3 to 5 minutes, to understand the structure of the chapter, and the way you do this is by skimming and going through the entire thing. This means scrolling through or flicking through the pages with the goal of simply understanding the structure of the chapter. Read the headings, the subheadings, any of the summaries at the end, and simply just look at how it is laid out. What are the topics that are included? How is the chapter divided up? Literally, the first 3 to 5 minutes of you studying needs to be you just creating a big picture and outline for the chapter in your head. Organic chemistry can be a complex topic, but once you know the headings and the subheadings and what information falls under each one, you'll be able to start kind of mentally organizing this content. You'll be able to start creating mental compartments for where the new information that you'll read later on can go in. Because what most people do subconsciously and should be doing consciously is organizing a filing cabinet for all of the pieces of information that they'll be reading later on. So all of the main cabinets, the main headings that you want to be putting and storing your information in. And obviously it'll really help when you're recalling information as well, because you'll remember, oh, this was in this, under this heading, and you understand. And that's what taking your time for 3 to 5 minutes to go through the structure, that's what it gives you. Next, let's go through the basic information of this topic. This is the second go through. Remember, we are not trying to master all of the details yet. We are just looking at the general concepts. The goal with this second go through of the topic is to look through the chapter for 15 to 30 minutes and familiarize yourself with number 1, the foundational concepts, what they are, how they work. And number 2, all of the question types that can be assessed with this topic. I'll explain a bit more about the question types in a second. Oh, and by the way, I'm only giving myself 15 to 30 minutes to go through this chapter for the second time because it constricts the amount of time and it stops me from diving into too much detail. It allows me to simply go through this chapter, understand what the processes involved are, and what the mathematical methods that I have to learn are as well, without me then diving into each formula, how it works, and every single detail about it. And what's different about these technical subjects is that side by side, when you are going through the second time, you need to be making a list of all the potential question types that can be coming up in your exam. So this is quite literally going through the concepts and then writing down all the conceivable types of questions that can be assessed to do with this topic. You can literally find these from going through the actual chapter, using the chapter questions with all the examples that they have usually, or using the past papers is what I'd recommend the most, and then looking at the related questions to do with this topic. However you do this, the point is that from the beginning, you are number 1, clearly thinking about the exact questions that you will eventually need to be solving in your exam. So there's a clear goal to all the studying and practice questions that you're going to be doing. And number 2, these question types will be the main components and key phrases that you'll actually include in your mind map. These concepts and all of the related question types will be the base of your entire topic. Simply put, there are a certain number of methods and types of questions that you could be assessed on to do with one single topic that you need to understand and then know how to solve. That is why making this list is the important part, not just for your mind mapping, for your exams as well. An important tip at this point that I really suggest you do is look through past papers to look at which topics come up more, how questions are phrased, how they assess you. Do they assess you by telling you to fill the gaps to do with an equation? Do they give you an example, a scenario, and tell you what to do? Looking at the past questions that have been asked to do with a topic before is what I do with every single topic I revise, even in medicine. The third go through, figuring out the grouping. This third go through is kind of the in-between step between the priming phase and the next phase, which is the relating phase of this method. And usually I've just done this while I was doing the second go through because I'm a bit faster, I think, at this point. But a lot of students find that third go through very useful, where they can look at the entire chapter, finalize their list of question types and concepts that they want to include on their mind map, and then they do this step, which is to categorize the concepts and all of the question types that we've listed into groups. Because this categorizing and grouping of information, these groups, is what we will be including on our mind map. And the reason this grouping is important, the reason we should be grouping information even if we don't make a mind map, is because categorizing and then grouping stuff into topics, subtopics, subtopics is how we think. The first part of remembering anything is to be able to look at it and identify where in my knowledge tree does it fit, which drawer in my big cupboard about this knowledge does it go in. Now, a lot of people suggest making a huge list of words and phrases and then just like trying to organize them on the mind map. And I think that's quite tough, and it really slows the process down. And the process of grouping information, figuring out, all right, how do I want to categorize all of these words and key phrases? What's actually important to put on my mind map? How can I make sense of this whole topic? All of it, A, promotes understanding, and B, it just is easier to think about all of this huge amounts of information if it's categorized. Very simple. Now, before we dive into the next phase, the relating phase, where the benefits of creating this mind map really shine through, a tool that can make that priming step a lot more visual, a lot more structured and easy to understand is EdrawMind. Now, let's say you've skimmed, you started to read through your content, you're starting to figure out the headings, the subheadings you want to include on your mind map, but organizing your thoughts, grouping all of this information is proving to be a lot more of a challenge than you thought. That's the step that EdrawMind is really beneficial for within this mind mapping method. Because instead of juggling all the information in your head as you're reading it, or trying to make a list of linear keywords that kind of resemble notes that don't really help you, instead of doing that, you can use this mind mapping software to categorize and group the information as you're reading it in a more structured visual manner. Now, by no means is this our final mind map. That's something I really wanted to clarify, because for our final mind map, we'll need a central idea. We'll need to see how different parts of the topics are linking together. We'll need to have a lot of diagrams in there to help us remember it. But what EdrawMind is really useful for is when you are reading through the topic for the first or second time, and then side by side in this software, you can write out the structure for the chapter. You can put the headings, the subheadings, see how different things link in as a preparation step. Like, for example, let me show you. When I'm going through organic chemistry, I write out the heading there. I'm putting this different functional groups there as well. And I'm creating a sort of a visual hierarchy, adding their subgroups. And you can keep going with this, add on while you continue to read. It's just a super useful tool to group the information in a very nice visual way to make sure you've not missed any like key concepts while you're reading or getting a feel for the chapter. And making this structured mind map of how things work is not a tool that you can see in any other note-taking app. You can also tweak every part of the style of the mind map, drag and drop different parts to reorganize things. If you feel like you need to tweak the structure as you go along, there's ready-made templates to organize different things as well that's specifically useful for your subject. You can use specific templates for your subject. Plus, you can AI generate entire parts of your mind map on there as well. I would use this with caution, obviously. I wouldn't generate your entire mind map using AI. I would use it as an enhancement feature, if you know what I mean, but super OP tool regardless. Overall, the biggest use case for this software that I'd recommend is to use it instead of creating that keyword list. To use it to improve your structure, the way you think about the chapter as a preparation stage for when you're planning out your actual mind map that you're going to draw out. Because look at it, as you can see, everything is neatly compartmentalized in a visual way, which I think really improves the way you think about the topic, the chapter. And then you'll see how much it actually eventually builds and helps you with that final mind map that you create. Essentially, I get a lot of questions about which mind mapping software to use. This is a great one that I've come across. Although it doesn't replace your final mind map, the one that you draw out, what it does do is that it enhances your process by taking care of the grouping. Because before you even start creating the mind map, when you read through it, you've already structured the headings and the subheadings in these groups, and that compartmentalizing at the end of it improves the speed at which you understand the topic. To download this mind mapping app, make sure to click the link in the description. Again, EdrawMind, if you'd like to download it, click the link in the description. Super useful tool that I'd recommend. Phase 2, relating. Now's the tough part. We need to convert this nice, neat list of concepts and question types, and we need to think about how it will actually look on our mind map. How will the different subtopics within this big topic link together? And hence, how will they be relating in our head for the rest of our revision? No pressure. Because that is the reason that we're making the mind map at the end of the day, right? We don't just want a list of concepts that are grouped up under headings and subheadings. What use is that for us? That's like notes. The reason, and I'm repeating this, the reason that we are making this mind map so that our brain has an initial structure that links all the different concepts together in a memorable way. That initial model that we can then use for the rest of our revision to go back to when we're learning new information, to attach that new information to. And that means, yes, you need to sit there actively for a while and think about what is a good, memorable, intuitive way that we can link all of these subtopics together on one single page. But let me explain the practical steps. This phase includes 2 main steps. Number 1, we find a central idea that links all the concepts of this chapter together. It can be a diagram, visual, anything. It has to be visual though. This central idea is going to serve as the skeleton, the anchor point for the whole mind map. So it's very important. Honestly, it sounds more difficult than it is because it just needs to be a simple drawing, a simple diagram that links the multiple concepts of this topic so that we can put that in the middle and have it be there instead of like the name of the topic in the middle of the mind map. And yes, it isn't easy. Every one of you will struggle with coming up with this central drawing or diagram that somehow will link all the concepts on the mind map together. It will take time, and you will have to start by staring at your list of groups and reading more about the major categories you've divided up the chapter into to find that one thing, that one image or drawing that links everything together. For organic chemistry here, I split the chapter up into mainly functional groups. So my thought was just to have the carbon atom or a Lewis diagram where each of the functional groups could be coming off of. It was very simple in my head. But what did it do? It linked all of the subtopics, all of the things that I wanted to talk about in organic chemistry into one thing in the middle. For trigonometry, I was thinking that it could be the unit circle in the middle with a triangle, and that could include, that would represent cos, sine, different angles, radians. You could do so much with it. Again, all of the topics and equations could be linked through that simple central diagram. And the reason this is important, by the way, is so that we can branch off quite easily from this diagram. Anyways, I can put up plenty of central ideas for each topic, but you don't copy what I have. Come up with the central idea yourself because that is what makes it memorable. But honestly, it's just way better to create a mind map where there is a central diagram in the middle compared to the topic's name. Because speaking from experience, you will always, when you think about a topic, you will always go back to that central image. Legit, when I picture bone diseases, the main ones, I picture my joint drawing that I drew where half of it was super inflamed and half of it had like a more worn down shape. Or for the uterine diseases, I drew a uterus diagram, and with each bit of the disease that I was looking at, I drew a different part of the disease in different parts of the uterus. Literally, if you ask me about a certain disease to do with that, that is what I'll remember. And then when I need to recall a certain fact or a specific like investigation or how a disease works, I will think back to that middle picture, and then from that I will branch out and think about the rest of the topic, because that's my core understanding. That image, that drawing of that topic and all of its outside parts, which we will talk about and how to relate those as well, is my minimum basic understanding and how I will remember this topic for the rest of my life. So point is, if you have the central diagram, you will number one be able to add on to it a lot more easily when you're drawing this mind map. So logically, it's better and it makes sense. And number two, when you think about this topic, you'll be able to remember way easily. You'll be able to remember the rest of the topic way more easily. I know it's easy to be lazy with this step, and most of the students that I'm teaching how to make this create this mind map are quite lazy with creating the central idea. But it's doable because after a few attempts at having the central diagram within your mind map as being the core focus, instead of writing the topic's name, you will see how much more you remember. You will see how much it benefits you and adds to your understanding overall. Anyways, let's get to the outer parts of the mind map out now, the second step of this relating phase. Now that you've created the central idea that links the major parts of this chapter into one simple drawing, step one, you need to be thinking about how all the groups and subheadings within the chapter can be related to each other. That's the next step. How all the methods, the formulas, the question types within the different groups can be kind of linked together so that we can then relate them and structure them on our mind map. Essentially, very simply put, this is where we plan what goes on the rest of our mind map and how we're going to link the different topics, the different groups together. Obviously, alkenes, alkanes are all related to that central idea of that carbon atom, but what other similarities and differences are there between the specific concepts within each of those things, the reaction mechanisms, what are their similarities, differences, the types of questions that can be asked about them, what are their similarities and differences. Once you come up with the relations between the information in the first group, the second group, the third group, the fourth group, however many groups you have, that is when you start to write them down, because you'll forget otherwise. Writing the relations down between the groups is, from what I've seen, the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, it just gets confusing. Once you start writing down the differences and similarities between the different groups, you kind of start picturing, oh, maybe I can put this thing on my mind map in this way. Maybe I can represent them in a table. You just start to more easily picture how these groups will come off of that central idea. This step, again, it takes time to get good at, but do not forget an important tip here. When you're doing the central idea, when you're doing this relating phase, you should not stop learning about the topic. Actually, honestly, the reading you do when you're trying to figure out what the central idea could be, when you're trying to figure out how things are similar and different to each other, that is the most effective learning that is occurring. The process of you creating the mind map is, again, more important than the end product. You building up the structure of the mind map, which is why I put so much emphasis on this step. You building up the structure is where you learn the most. That is probably where you're hitting all the levels of the Bloom's taxonomy model. And finally, once you have all this written stuff down, once you've written down the relationships, decide what's important, what's going to go on your mind map, and plan it out. Plan out how it's going to look, almost as exactly as you can. If it's easy to draw out a quick mind map out by hand, then do that. If it's easy to write out what it looked like in bullet points, then do that. Either way, just plan the mind map out as specifically as you can before you start jumping in and drawing it out. And also, just to remind you, you planning to create the mind map, you doing all the skimming work, all this priming, none of it is a time waste. You are literally coming up with different ways that your brain can forever remember every single important concept within a chapter that you're studying. Now that we've actually planned out the mind map 70 to 80% of it and pretty much figured out what we're going to put on it, now is when we go into the organizing phase, the third phase of the pro mind mapping method. This is where we actually organize and create the mind map with its central idea, the subtopics around it, the question types being linked and compared to each other as well. This is the part where it all goes on one page. I'm not going to go into crazy amounts of detail when it comes to the organizing and creating this mind map because I've talked about it in so many other videos. Plus, I've made an absolutely free full PDF mind mapping guide linked in the description below, which is where I go through all of the three phases in a lot of detail. I have frequently asked questions on there. I talk about this organizing phase in a lot more detail and give you tips on how you can make it visual, you can make it colorful, you can make it memorable and helpful for your learning. Again, linked in the video description if you want a free copy of this guide sent directly to your email address straight away. But essentially, these, I'll put them up right now, are the key points that you need to be focusing on when you're creating an effective mind map that organizes everything you need to know super well. So throughout this video, I've included my entire process of creating a mind map for organic chemistry, very specific topic in chemistry, but again, this process applies to every single technical topic, every single technical subject you have. This is the understanding part of the studying that you need to do for these subjects, and it is absolutely crucial. It does not replace practice questions, but what it does do is makes your life easier when you're actually doing them, because you'll be able to understand what this question is asking from you, and then you'll be able to remember how to solve it, the method, which to be honest is all we really want to be doing when we're doing these subjects. I'm gonna link in this mind mapping guide, which is gonna go through how to create these mind maps in a lot more detail. I think it's a full guide on how I do it, and then I'm gonna link this video. It's my most watched video on the channel, but I'm going to link this in because it kind of goes through how you can be using this mind mapping and then linking it to the rest of your revision as well. It talks through that in a lot more detail. Do check out the waitlist for the course, the free mind mapping guide. There's a lot of links in there for different mind mapping videos that I've done. I hope you found this video useful. Again, leave a like, spam the comments, check these two videos out that I've linked in. They'll be very useful to your learning, and I will see you in the next one.